The age of social media is a broader age. Social media is just a symptom of a wider thing where communication technologies are enable people to interconnect. Specifically with social media, what I'm finding in social media is people are talking about the weather and what they've had to eat, etc. But they're also talking about serious topics, and they want to discuss those serious topics. And they're looking for reliable resources, authoritative descriptions of those topics, whether it be a tweet by an American president, whether it be an article by an esteemed physicist or whatever. And linked data gives us the ability to interlink and therefore easily find authoritative descriptions, etc. And it's actually evolving in a way that you can look at the reputation of the authority that's delivering it. So in a particular area I'm working in with schema.org at the moment, they're looking at expanding that linked data. So you can say that the person that made this statement or the organisation that made this statement is trustworthy in a particular way, and get other organisations via the links to support that trustworthiness. So bringing it back to social media is getting serious now. People are doing real serious things as well as frivolous things, but and using it for education, etc. So that they need reliable, easily accessible factual information that they can get in the environment they're in within social media. So you don't really go to the local library to get an answer for a tweet. You want the link there and then. You want it in your environment, and that's where linked data delivers the power. Yeah, fake news, bless its title, it is a particular challenge. But when we're on a web where it's not just a page of text coming from some server in the world, it's got embedded data in it saying that this is about a particular person and this is the particular person it's about, and here's a physical link within the data that people can follow. It becomes easier, not easy, but easier to validate those connections. Also where that data came from. So if it's a description about I don't know, an activity in an industry in America, and it's coming from a data source in a small village in Romania, people are not going to trust it as much. Whereas if that information is supported by and pointed to from the New York Times, for instance, or the Daily Mail in the UK, or wrong newspaper, but hey, that you can start to build up reputation and facts. And the activities that are going on in schema.org at the moment are all basing it on the mechanism we all know and love about reviews. So you trust a review of a hotel, for instance, in something like TripAdvisor, if you understand the reputation of the person making that review. So when somebody reviews a news article for factual truth, you start to look at the reviewer of that article, and if it happens to be a reputable organisation, you're more liable to trust that article. It's a mechanism that's taking shape. It's not there yet, but there's a lot of work going on in that environment to enable us to do this. It will never be perfect, but hopefully it's going to be a lot better. There'll be two levels of that. What you would possibly see is an article about the President of the United States, for instance. And as a human, you could look at that article and say, do I trust it? Who has reviewed it? But equally, the search engines could look at the reviews of that article and where they come from. And if they trust the authorities that are agreeing with it, they can then start putting their own stamps of approval. And we're starting to see that appearing in some environments where you almost put a trusted symbol on a particular article, and that says that the search engines or people like Facebook or Twitter have looked at the references to that article that say it is truthful and valuable, and they will aggregate that and say, I think I trust it enough to put a trust mark on it of some sort. Well, as I said in my presentation, we need some consistency. There are many valuable digital library projects out there, and we've seen some at this conference being presented. They're all different. They're all using different data models. They're all using different approaches. So we're not building on we're building on the technical experience, but we're not building on the data experience. So the idea of linked data is you use a standard vocabulary, not all the different vocabularies that are out there. So there are some emerging, there's specific library vocabularies like BibFrame, which has been published by the Library of Congress. You've got general purpose vocabularies like schema.org that's come from the search engine. So if we all start using the same or very similar vocabularies, we can start interlinking each other's data, which is the benefit, but also understand it when we do and understand the connection. So you might easily link to somebody else's data, but then if you have to write some code to decode their version to make it look like your version, you set up a massive barrier to entry. So we need consistency of approach. We need to build on what's being done. We need the suppliers of systems. So not everybody can build their own system. So we need the suppliers of systems to start delivering standards-based systems, but they've been challenged because these standards like BibFrame and schema.org have only recently emerged. So if I was going to build a library system to sell to lots of different libraries, I'd be saying, well, which standard should I build it to? Which is delivered inertia into the system suppliers. They're starting to come out of that now. I predict, and it is only a prediction, over the next few years we'll start to see all the major library system suppliers emerge with library systems that support things like BibFrame and schema.org. Then you're going to get delivery at scale to what I would call the medium-sized, I haven't got a development department, libraries taking advantage of it, which should then spread and bring the standardisation and hopefully bring the avalanche that you're looking for. Coming from the standardisation I've just been talking about, if people can understand each other's data and it's published openly and you can get at it and you can find it, it will naturally build that collaboration. And it overcomes some of the barriers. A good example is you may, in a library, have your own definitions of particular books, and a partner library have got their definitions, but they're different. With a linked data environment, library A could say link to, I don't know, OCLC's WorldCat library and say, my work here is the same as that one in WorldCat. And this library could do exactly the same using standard tools that are available. Because they're both linked to the same definition, they can actually cross-link between each other without having to directly understand each other's format. So yes, it should build cooperation and wider than the individual libraries, because linked data, especially through initiatives like schema.org, is spreading across industries, tourism, retail, media, etc. You can link wider than your own environment. So not just saying you've got a video of a TV show, you could then provide the link to the TV show's own website, that kind of thing. You can cooperate wider than your own environment as well as within it. Yeah, schema.org is already becoming a de facto vocabulary. Notice I don't use the word standard. It's not issued by an ISO standards body or whatever. It hasn't been developed by technicians going for lots of lunches in lots of countries for 5 years or whatever. It's evolved through a community of practice. So it has become a de facto vocabulary for describing things on the web, not specifically library data or archive data or museum data, any old data, which gives you a nice level playing field for people to cooperate and integrate. And it's only when you get down to the real detailed cataloguing that you might do inside a particular library to deliver a capability that, say, researchers might want, etc., that you start having to be specific. So, schema.org is good enough for sharing data with others that you want to bring to your environment. So it is already becoming a de facto standard for the web. What needs to happen in the digital library environment, for the reasons that we've previously discussed, is the libraries need to now start adopting these de facto standards so that they can see the benefits of that cooperation. The advice would be listen to most of the presentations in this conference, because there's been good advice at all levels. So keep the data in the data level, use standardized vocabularies, use linked data techniques. But most importantly, look at your users and not look at your user when they enter your National Digital Library. Look at your user from when they get up in the morning and work out how you get that user to the information you have in your resources from where they start. So they don't start in the National Digital Library. Do they even know it exists? If they do they remember the URL? Or does the Google search for the National Digital Library of India point them at the right place? Or do they just type in NDL and end up with the National Digital Library of some other country? You know, all these things, you need to be discoverable. And then for the search engines to take that user to the actual resource they want. What the user wants to do is say, hey Siri, and get the answer, or type in a very simple search in their mobile or on a computer and be taken directly to the resource, not the NDL search prompt. They want to go to the resource, which means for that to happen, the search engines need to know about your resources. So don't keep your information in an NDL silo. Don't even keep it in a library silo. Share the information in a way that the resources that guide your users from the moment they get up in the morning to your resources. So give the search engines that information so your user can come to you in the most efficient way and you can satisfy their need as rapidly as possible. I think that's a benefit. You haven't got a lot of historical baggage, which is good. You can learn from the mistakes and the benefits that other libraries have done. From what I can see from the non-technological presentations, as a digital library, you've got the support of the organisations around you. UNESCO, the Indian government are all pushing in this direction. And quite often you hear of digital libraries initiatives that have been run by a university or a city or even a country where they've delivered it, it's wonderful, but nobody uses it. And why are they not using it? Well, they need to be able to find it, etc. But they're not being told about it, they're not being encouraged to use it. And the people that provide the information to it are not being encouraged. And from what I've seen, and from the buy-in from the government, UNESCO, etc., and the other partners, that encouraging is happening on both sides, input and use, at all levels, and it seems to be being well funded from what we hear from the announcement earlier on. So I think you stand a really good chance of making a success of this, both from coming at it later. Great, you can learn from other people's mistakes. And from what we've just talked about, you can tell we're at a bit of a cusp of a change of the technological environment that you can take up. So don't bake your solution in, be agile, let it evolve. But you've got the backing, which gives me a lot of confidence that you stand a good chance of success. Nobody's perfect, nobody's guaranteed, but I think you've got a good chance as anybody.